Well, quite frankly, I think it's the only way we're going to finally see the implementation of many recommendations that have been coming from the community for years. So in terms of them sort of taking seriously what the recommendations are, I think that it needs a certain government stamp of approval on it, a certain sort of, official mechanism for gathering that information. So I think that this is absolutely paramount if we're ever going to see the police, victim services, prison systems, Crown, prosecutors, everybody who's involved, because we're talking about system-wide reform here. If we're ever going to see every detail and hear every problem and try to fill the gaps that allowed this to happen, this is what we have to have.
And what questions would you like to see answered in a public inquiry?
What were the gaps in service that allowed this to happen? For instance, at Victim Services currently, to access victims' compensation, if you've been the victim of a crime and you need to have support services or counseling, you have to be able to attribute your trauma to one particular event. So in terms of sex workers, Victim Services deems us all too raped to qualify for victims' compensation, as well as they told us we were too greedy and that we would never cut off the victim compensation. So these sorts of attitudes are totally putting up barriers to a program which is really intended to protect these very people. This is what it's about, and we can't access the service. So we need to see total reform, top to bottom. Also, we want to talk about how the bylaws, for instance, of the City of Vancouver are creating an environment which forces people to work on the street. The closure of show lounges, the closure of massage parlors, no licenses for people with criminal records. This doesn't make any sense. We have to look at every single nitty-gritty detail. I think the only way to actually capture that is through something very official, public inquiry, something that these systems will listen to, something we can wield like a club to make these people treat us like real Canadian citizens and give us the rights that we deserve.
And how dangerous is sex work nowadays in Vancouver?
Well, it depends what sector you're working in. If you're working in an Asian micro brothel, it's very dangerous. We've got a situation where gangs are trying to take them over and extorting them. And this is, I think, as a direct result of them enforcing against the micro brothels and pushing them further and further underground. They're unwilling to phone police. In terms of violence on the street, yes, the police are not arresting those women anymore, but they're still enduring the same sorts of violence because all of the other systematic barriers still exist. While we do have some good programs like the Vivian, like WISH, like Mobile Access Project, this is just a drop in the bucket compared to what needs to happen. So, now, if you're working indoors independently, sure, you're relatively safe, but how long is that going to last? With the new changes to the Criminal Code of Canada, I can see myself being 5 years in prison for working out of my own home, being my own pimp. Once again, changing things without talking to anybody. Who knows how long our stability will last? It's time for us to try to step up, get this public inquiry rolling so that there can be no doubt about what needs to be done.
And how satisfied are you with the progress done on the Living in Community project?
I think it's great. I've been a part of that committee since the very beginning. Of course, it's slow with funding coming. These processes, there is no easy fix. It's been 100 years of criminalization of sex workers in Vancouver. It's not going to happen overnight. They have received funding for their pilot project, which is going to go on in Joyce Collingwood, which is a neighborhood impacted by the street trade recently. In particular, after the Olympics, lots of workers were forced into that community. And so we would love to see what implementation of all of those recommendations would do to impact the safety of sex workers and, of course, the whole community. Would it impact the safety of women walking in the community, clean up the schoolyards where the condoms are? Do you know what I mean? Like, would it help? So I'm really looking forward to that. I have a lot of hope.
And what about the Sex Workers Co-op? Where are you at with that?
Well, we actually just, we had to take a step back. I applied for funding twice over the 2.5 years, and of course nothing's forthcoming. We're always the first to get cut and the last in line. So we got a generous donation from a gold mining company, this eccentric guy. He's so cute. Anyway, he gave us a substantial amount, so I had to open up a bank account for the cooperative. So I was inspired by the Calcutta Cooperative, who have 65,000 members, and so I went back to their website to sort of try to draw some inspiration on how can we do this. So what we decided to do is now we've opened up what we're calling the Small Business Loans Fund, and so we're going to try to create a fund against which sex workers can borrow small business loans for a number of things. What if a person has a fire, they need to move? What if they have to escape a stalker? Maybe we could have small $2,000 relocation loans for members of the co-op. as well as we wanted to have exiting opportunities. What if sex workers wanted to open up a flower shop together or a restaurant or something like that? They could, with a good business plan, apply to the board of directors of the cooperative and borrow money against what we have in the bank. So the idea is to keep the principal and never spend it and just authorize these loans so we become the funder.